Hey, gang. Welcome back to the Go Time podcast. This episode, I've got Dale Comstock. And the list of accomplishments that this guy has done is, man, you can't deny a life well lived and that has accomplished a lot of things. I had to write them all down. I can't even imagine remembering them all, but he was U.S. Delta Force operator for 10 years, Green Beret, paramilitary contractor, combat tours in Grenada, Panama, Iraq, Somalia, and Afghanistan. He's got a doctor's degree in natural health, master's in business, and he's been a professor, public speaker, a pro boxer, bodybuilder, black belt in jiu-jitsu, author of the book American Badass, canine trainer, and as of recent, leadership coach. Man, and I think Dale is a little bit of it could be a controversial person because he's pretty well straightforward and to the point on what he says and how he feels about stuff. And you got to respect somebody like that. Not only respect him for what he says, but you have to respect him for what he's done. More than anything else. What this guy has not only sacrificed in getting to do what he's done for a living and what his service has been, but you have to respect him for what he's sacrificed, home life and everything else to do the things that he's done. My question to him, the thing that I really wanted to know, what is it that a guy like him fights for? What makes him take on the role? It's the same role that we see in first responders and everything, right? And I think it's an important question to ask. Probably a really important question to ask the young people nowadays is finding out what it really means to them to be an American. You can do a lot of stuff. You can do a lot of tough stuff. You can be a police officer on the streets of America now. You can be an EMT. You can be a firefighter. You can be the Green Beret, going out and doing things in the world. But you can't do those jobs without having an understanding for the quality of life. And you can't do and fulfill those duties and as a job without a greater understanding of something greater than yourself. There has to be purpose in what you do, and it has to make sense. If not, there's no reason to take a bullet for somebody else. You can't do that job without understanding there's value in life. And that's something that America stood for. And I wanted to get that out of Dale. I wanted to talk to him about what does it mean to be an American to him? Someone who has, being an American meant a lot, right? It meant enough that one of his details is Secret Service. And so if you're Secret Service, you've got to think that who you're defending and who you're fighting for has more value than what your life is. It's the same thing that I would look at if I was defending my family. I would jump in front of anything in order to save my wife or my children, because I value their life more than I do my own. That's something you have to consider when you're dealing with guys that are frontline, first line responders and guys that have done some of the things that Dale has done, is they have to have a strong sense of what's right and wrong. And so that's what we explored with Dale. He's got some strong opinions. I like a lot of his opinions. And we get to talk about them, not just, a blanket, I think this or I think that, but, getting in and delving in a little bit to purpose behind it. I really enjoy this one, man. And I respect men who are unapologetic for what they believe. You don't have to agree on everything. But it's worth a listen. If you disagree, you should at least understand where it comes from. And that's how you become educated on other people's views, is to actually listen to them and see where they come from, because everybody has a different life experience, and it can help you grow and have you better understand, even to argue your own point, if that's happens to be it. So I hope you enjoy it. I really did. There's 2 segments to this, and some great stuff on both. Dale's a lot of fun to talk to. So here you go, or here we go, because it's go time.
Welcome to the Go Time Podcast. Go Time Podcast with your host, Todd Martin.
I think one of the things that we talked about last time that I thought was probably the most, I don't know, I mean, there was a whole lot of stuff, but you know, that was probably the most impactful, I thought, was, and I guess pertinent for nowadays too, is, gosh, what it was like growing up, and what's your motivation for, and what it means. Like, I don't know, we're on the heels of 4th of July. And what does it mean? What does it mean to you to be an American? You grew up in different areas. You spent a good portion of your life outside of, you know, the U.S. But growing up, you know, your dad was in the military, being around in the military and everything else. You know, there was just and me too. Like growing up, and you know, I grew up in South Texas, and you know, we grew up. You know, it was just a different feeling growing up as an American than what I'm feeling with, you know, and I'm trying to recreate it with my kids. But, you know, what was that? What was it like to you? You can't go into the kind of stuff that you've done over the years and not have a feeling and an understanding of right from wrong. What gets you that? What gives you that motivation? What does being an American mean to you?
So I was fortunate enough to be born into the military culture because my father was in the Army when I was born. He spent 20 years in service. So my entire youth growing up, all the way through high school, was living at military installations in Germany and across the United States. That's all I knew. That was my culture. We lived on bases. We lived in government housing. We went to government schools. Everything was, you know, my life was the U.S. Army. And so I think we talked about this before where, you know, the difference, like, for example, there is a huge difference between the military culture and the civilian culture. And so growing up in the military, for example, you know, at 5 o'clock when, they play retreat for the flag, they lower the flag on any concern when the horn blows, the bugle blows, you know, even cars that are moving, they have to stop. You know, the servicemen get out and women get out and they render salute while the flag and all the bugle's playing. And even we as kids were inculcated in that, I won't say indoctrinated, but inculcated in that mindset. So we would get out, put our hands on our heart. I remember my friends and I playing football all the time, street football. All of a sudden, 5 o'clock came around, the bugle played. We just stopped and we'd face the bugle, the flag, wherever it was, the bugle, and put our hands over our heart. When we went to the movie theaters on post, before the movie actually showed, they would play the national anthem. For, you know, video of the waving flag, and everybody in the movie theater would stand up and render respect to the national anthem, to the flag. So that's the culture I grew up in. You know, as a young kid, man, you know, me and all my friends, we would borrow our father's T-850, you know, their military gear, helmets and low-bearing equipment. And our dads didn't have a problem with that. You know, we'd go out and play Army, you know. We shoot each other with BB guns and stuff like that. You know, we used to make mortars out of, back in the day. So they didn't have aluminum can. They used steel cans like Coca-Cola and stuff like that. So it was a hard can. And we cut the bottoms out and then basically tape them all together into a tube. And then in the bottom, we put a small hole in the last can. We'll make it like a little reservoir, put rubbing alcohol in it, and then we'd drop tennis balls. And we had mortars, and we'd launch mortars at each other, right? They were pretty badass.
We did the same thing with potato guns. You ever made a potato gun?
Yeah. So, that's how I grew up. Always grew up playing Army. We learned discipline. We learned to respect our country. We learned to respect the flag. And it was a different time. And, as I mentioned to you before, another conversation, after my father retired from Fort Huachuca, Arizona, we moved to Menlo Park, San Francisco, or California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And suddenly I'm now been taken away from the military culture, and now I've been immersed into a civilian culture, civilian high school. And it was a culture shock for me, one that I could not assimilate to. I had a very hard time adapting to it. I don't know why, but I just did. It just didn't feel the same. The kids didn't feel the same, and that was a long time ago. I mean, when you look at my age now, but, nothing happens overnight, especially when, our society changed. It's a slow, gradual, almost insidious process. And here we are. So, that's what prompted me to go into the military as soon as I could. I mean, I was in the military. I signed up at the beginning of my senior year, knowing that when I graduate, that's where I'm going. Couldn't wait
at the beginning of your senior year.
Yeah, man, I could not wait to go, man. I got on what's called the delayed entry program. And so, oh my God, man. So, it was only logical for me to do that. Nothing else seemed to fit me. And so it's been so after I got out of the military, retired from the military, and, came to corporate America, now became a civilian, I can honestly say I'm still a fish out of the water, but I've become a chameleon in another way, right? So fish, chameleons, fish, lizards. But what I've learned how to do is blend in, so to speak, right? So that's what I've had to learn how to do, how to blend in and adapt and camouflage myself with civilians out here, because they do think differently, different work ethic. Sometimes just amazed, like, man, how does the whole world make any kind of progress as slow as they move? The decision-making process is ridiculously, it's like it takes 2 weeks to a month for anybody to make a simple decision, literally, whereas the military, it was on the spot. Things got done, and that was a whole culture shock for me. But I'm getting a little detracted from the original question. So how do I feel about, now we're actually just now coming out of the 4th of July. And I got to tell you, sadly, in the last few years, I would say probably starting in the Obama era and Hillary Clinton era, as they were running for president. And I started to see, there's always been a shared paradigm shift in our country. It's been slow, insidious, nobody really paid attention to it, but it was actually happening. And then it started to accelerate around their era. And I saw the writing on the wall, as did many people like me, as did a lot of veterans and a lot of conservatives. And suddenly today we're in a place where I don't recognize this country. I don't recognize it as for what it was. What I see now is totally obscene, foreign. And I'll tell you, here I am, a veteran. I've spent 30 years for the United States government, okay, literally fighting for this country, literally fighting at close range, within feet of our adversaries, shooting them in the face on behalf of this country. I have lost a lot of friends on fighting on behalf of this country. And now I look back, I'm like, what was it all for? Because we've given this country away to the enemies within, and we let the enemies without manipulate these fools within. And so we're fighting a battle on many fronts within our country and outside our country. We're fighting other Americans, and I have to bite my tongue when I say these. They're called the others Americans, because in fact they're not. They're pseudo-Americans at best. They're parasites. They live in the country. They live off the host, but they contribute nothing until they kill the host. And that's how I see it. So, So, I don't have to go over all the stuff that's happening in our country right now.
Yeah.
As a veteran, I will tell you, there was a time when, even when I wrote my book, American Badass, okay, the reason I wrote the book, American Badass, was during 2012. I published it on the 4th of July. And I actually wrote it because I was friends with Chris Kyle, the American Sniper. And I actually didn't know he wrote the book, American Sniper. And I looked at it, I go, wow, man, pretty impressive. I didn't know you wrote the book, As we got to chatting, he's like, I want to read your book. I want to grow up to be like you, because he was 32 at the time, and I was 48 years old. And I already had, entertained the idea of writing an autobiography. And when he said that, it just kind of drove it home for me. I literally turned around, picked up my cell phone, called my management team, said, I want to write a book. But I said, although it's going to be an autobiography, and this may sound a little weird, I said, I don't want it to be just about me. I wanted to be about everybody. And particularly what I wanted to do was motivate young men to be men. Okay. Because at that time, I'm looking around going, what is going on with the young men in America? I mean, these guys are a bunch of pansies. They don't want to go outside in the rain because their hair might get wet, and they can't get off the couch. They play all these video games. They're becoming fat and lazy and sorry. And I've actually seen that in combat. I've seen the product of what America has produced on the battlefield. That's a whole nother story in itself. But basically, it was scary to see an infantry platoon sitting in the shade with the gear off during a firefight, while 500 meters to the front was an MRAP with American casualties laying there bleeding out and dying. And these guys wouldn't go up and help them because it was too hot. Not hot like in a firefight, but hot in the weather. And so my guys had to go out. My Afghans had to go out, recover these Americans and triage them and apply medical care to them while the American medics watch these young kids. So, that was an indicator that we're in a bad place. Now, I'm not saying all kids or young men are like that or all soldiers like that, but it's getting bad. It's getting huge. When I see a whole platoon sitting on their ass, I could expect one guy to go, man, it's too hot, but not everybody. It's immoral, it's unethical. Who does that kind of shit? So this is what our nation has produced, right? We've coddled these guys. It probably started with Dr. Spock, and this bullshit about, not spanking your kids and this and that, and we have basically emasculated young men before they even grow up to be men. So they grow up to be these pansy ass beta males, right? So that's why I wrote the book. But, so I used to encourage young men to join the military. In fact, they used to come to my home in Florida from traveling around the country, come and spend a weekend with me to learn about firearms, about military life, culture, everything. They wanted to talk to me about that. And I would motivate these guys, coach them, train them, teach them things. And I've sent many of them off to the military to become everything from Green Berets to Marines to Rangers to SEALs. And I don't do that no more. I actually had a kid call me the other day from San Jose, California, and he's like, hey, I'm really interested in joining the military. I want to be like you. I want to go to Delta Forces, Special Forces. And, can you, give me some guidance? And I sat there and I thought about it, and I was like, I got to be true to myself. As much as I want this kid to have a good life and join the military, because I did, and I got a lot out of it. I had to tell the kid, listen, dude, I said, go to school. I said, create a business, all right, become your own boss, become a sovereign man, and don't join the military. I said, because it sounds all cool and stuff now. It's not the same military. Why? Well, think about this. Think about the country you're going to be fighting for. Think about this administration, okay? It's basically we're becoming a socialist country. The only difference between socialism and communism is in socialism, we freely give up our freedom. In communism, the government just goes ahead and takes away from it. So we're right there, man. And
well, so I got it. That leads me into a question. I wonder, like, so you've done all the things you've done through Special Forces and Green Beret and writing books and being in movies and TV and all that stuff, right? And now you're doing leadership coaching and that kind of stuff. And so, like, all that stuff circles back around to leadership and leadership. I think leadership is one of those things that I think is one of the most important things that we can teach young men. And that has to be really, to be teaching that to young men, it has to be taught by men to young men, not a theoretical idea of what your idea of leadership. And there's some certain attributes about leadership that I think is paramount. I think that on when it comes to leadership, there's tons of examples of different types of leadership, but I think the one most proper type of leadership is a sacrificial leader, like someone who is leading, that is truly leading from the front, not from a desk, but that is truly leading from in front, can really inspire other people. And it has to be done. That's why I started this question, right? Was that in order to lead from the front, be led, you look at Stalin, or you look at any of the tyrants in the past, they didn't lead from the front. You saw, like, George Washington, like, my favorite picture is the one of George Washington crossing the Delaware at the front of the boat, right? And leadership done well, that's who started and led our country, was leadership done well from the front, right? And in order to do that from the front, you have to be inspired yourself as a leader by doing the right things, and knowing what our country stood for at those times gave you the opportunity to lead. You weren't a leader that stood back and sent the guys out. Like, you were one of those guys that led from the front, and you lead from the front now and teaching that. But it's from experience, and like from hard experience, from seeing things from a point of view of not just what we can glorify as far as in the cool part of the firefight, but the shitty part of the firefight too, where you have brothers that are hurt, that you're dragging guys out, that there's a reality and a cost. Man, I think that's one thing that we're missing, is the understanding the cost of freedom right now. And you've given, and not to belittle what you've done, but there's other guys that have given the ultimate cost for freedom. And those were some of your friends. And that's the part that, like, I think that's something that we're losing out, and we're not realizing that freedom comes at a cost, and that cost is blood. And giving it back up is easy, but you're not going to get it back out or back again without that same bloodshed. It's proven throughout history that it's the same thing. So, like, I think that's one thing that I know you're doing leadership training now. So when you have these guys that are coming in, you use that experience, to lead those guys and give them, advice from a front, from somebody that saw it from the front. So what are you doing now with that, as far as, like, because you still do a bunch of other stuff. You do leadership from a whole different, a bunch of different avenues.
Yeah. So on the topic of leadership, this is what I was going to earlier was, you're right. I used to lead young guys and mentor them, encourage them, and show them the way to be a patriotic American, all these things that I actually believed in. Suddenly I hit the brakes, go, wait a minute, and so the fall of Kabul was an eye opener for me. It's like, again, because this happened in Mogadishu. Okay. We went there, we went to go find a deed, go get a deed. We lost a bunch of men. Okay, including 6 Delta Force operators, 77 wounded, and then our illustrious president at that time, Bill Clinton, decided we're going to pull out, we're going to go home with all our stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, we never accomplished the mission. And as a soldier, we are expected to accomplish the mission, and we expect our leadership to do the same thing, to have the same resolve. Suddenly, a bunch of men are dead and wounded for life. Okay. And for what? For nothing. Nothing came from that. Nothing. Tell me one thing that came out of there that was positive. Nothing positive came from that. A lot of dead men, broken families. Moving on forward, last year, in Kabul, we saw the same thing happen again. All these men and women that have died all these years fighting a global war on terror in Afghanistan for not. It wasn't because of Osama bin Laden. We killed him a long time ago. We could have killed him longer than that, right? Suddenly, we have more dead bodies, and in the last day, and the entire time we're there. And why did they die? What positive thing came out of that? Nothing. Zero. You think killing Osama bin Laden has changed the face of terrorism? Absolutely not. Nothing positive. So we got more dead friends, more dead family members, brothers, sons, daughters. They're dead. And guess what? They're not coming back. So when I see this happening, okay, now what I do is I tell these guys, don't do it. That sounds really bad from a guy like me, but I'm going to be realistic. I'm being a leader now. My leadership instinct is telling me, don't do it. You're a fool. You will die for nothing for a country that doesn't care about you. You think these liberals, these Democrats care about these men? No, they don't. They don't care about any of this. They don't care about freedom, because if they did, they'd arm themselves and they would go represent our country. They won't do it. So, that's the cautionary tale I got to put out there now. Is like, you know what? And I tell men and women, I don't have a lot of women followers, young men, actually older men and young men of all ages follow me. And I tell them all, be a sovereign man so that you're not codependent on a government, on an administration that's got control over your life, your money, your sovereignty. Try to divorce yourself from that and be as independent as you can, because they're going to take. So my whole opinion as an American at a patriotic time like this is, I have no patriotism left for this country. I have none, because it's been destroyed. It's been destroyed terribly by the left, and sadly, the silent majority has allowed this. The silent majority
I agree.
Has allowed this, right? The squeaky wheel got over grease, and they thought, well, we'll just vote them out. Nothing happened. How did that work out? It didn't work out. But moving on to I want to expand on the leadership piece of it. So getting away from this political part of it, this thing, my perspective on it, because it just makes my blood boil. I'm talking now from Bali, Indonesia. I live here. I have a home here. I'm in my office right now, my company. I do have a home in Florida and have a business there. I actually have a home in the Philippines as well. But here I'm living in a world where, nobody's eating out of each other's rice bowl. Nobody's mad because the guy next door's got a little bit more than you. Nobody's paying attention to all this crazy stuff we're paying attention to in America. That means nothing, right? People get along here. If you went down a road here about a mile from here, there's a Catholic, a Protestant church. There's a Buddhist temple. There's a Hindu temple, and there's a Buddhist, Hindu, Protestant, and Muslim. Four different temples or churches, all side by side, right next to each other. I mean, all in a row in one plaza. And everybody goes there to worship with the respective religion. And there's no fighting and arguing and giving each other a stink eye. Everybody just gets along. They don't care about the religious differences. They go do their thing, right? What a different world. And I'm very comfortable here because of that. It's like, it's a really nice relief, reprieve from all the
that's been proven throughout history too, that any tyrant or any person that's trying to overthrow something, one of the things that they do, along with several things, is they weaponize religion. It's there's I mean, you can screw around with any of that stuff and make it come out to whatever you want, the crazy part about it is it all comes down to the heart of man. The heart of man is kind of crappy anyhow. If you don't recognize the fact that deep down we're all kind of self-serving or all kind of crap at the beginning, instead of sitting around like the world's telling everybody that you're all good and it's you deserve. You don't deserve shit. what you do deserve is, a bunch of crap, because that's about what most of us are at the basis of it. And I think that's the craziest part of people don't like nowadays. Truth's not taught to these young men that there was a reason why it wasn't for religious purposes, that there was a reason why we had a country that was founded on "In God We Trust." And the reason why for it being "In God We Trust," not anything but God, right, was because there has to be a foundation for morality. Morality is not, if you go subjective with our morality, you go, well, what's good for you is good for you. And this is the lie that they're all telling us. What's good for you is good for you. And you do you and I'll do me. Well, that's all great and fine until what good for me is I take your shit, then that doesn't work out anymore.
Yeah. So on a different note, I guess, so something a little bit more motivating, inspiring I want to share with you about leadership, right? So I want to tell a story about my experience with leadership as a kid, okay, from a mentor, which happened to be my father. So here's the problem we have in America, maybe even the world, but mostly I'm going to talk about America, is we, for the most part, a lot of families don't have a father. And, look, divorce is rampant. I've been divorced more than once. It is what it is. It is a sign of the time. I make all the excuses I want. Doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, I have left my children without a father. Well, actually, their mothers have, because it takes two to tango, I suppose. But anyways, but what I have made sure that I've done, that I always do, is make sure I still stay connected closely with my kids. I still maintain a home in Florida just for my 13-year-old daughter and me. When I come back, we have a place to live. It's called home. And I come back only because of her. When I say come back, I come back from Bali. So I'll fly back home for a few months, come back over here for a little while, go back over there for a few months. In fact, I was home for 14 months. I just got back to Bali. I'll be here till a couple of weeks and heading back home. But anyways, on the note of leadership, here's what I want to tell people. Fathers are important. Mentors are important. You're right. It takes a man to lead a man. It takes a man to lead a boy. Okay. Inherently, we have different traits. We have different experiences. Some of it's just innate. Okay, they've done studies and experiments where they're like, they give the boy, a Barbie doll to play with. They give the girls G.I. Joe dolls to play with, and ultimately the boy gravitates back to the G.I. Joe. And he's even though you don't have a gun, he's fabricating guns. He's got this warrior hunter mindset, because that's genetically what we are as men. Yeah. Now my dad and women are nurturers. They always gravitate to the babies and the puppies and the nurturing stuff. It's an innate thing that some of the people in our society want to deny, right? And they tell you to believe the science when they're actually not believing the science, because the science says otherwise. It's being proven over and over and over. So on a leadership note, so here's the story. My dad was in the Army for 20 years, and one of the things I remember about my father, even growing up, I was about, even at the age of 7, I remember living in Germany. Every day my dad came home, he was a platoon sergeant. Every day he came home in uniform. Back then they had what's called the pickle suits, right? The green suits, the OG-107s, the Vietnam era suits. Uniform.
I still think those are the best suits.
Yeah, the baseball cap, the black combat boots. And he would come home every day from work, and I remember he would sit down at the dining room table. He had a little shoe box. You could put your foot on there, and then he would start spit shining his boots. He didn't brush shine; he spit shine his boots every day. That's how I learned how to do it. He'd warm up the shoe polish. He'd take a diaper, wrap around his fingers, spit on it, get some polish on it, and then start polishing the tips. He did that every night. Every night. He didn't even take his uniform off. He did his boots first. Priorities of work. He prioritized work for the next day as soon as he came home. Once he got that all done, then it was okay. Dinner time, relax, whatever. One day I remember sitting at the kitchen table with him while he's polishing his boots. It was almost a ritual. I guess I was waiting for him to hurry up and polish his boots so he could eat. Like, come on, Dad, hurry up. And so my dad asked me a question. And he goes, son, let me ask you a question. Imagine you have a platoon in front of you, soldiers. And he says, behind you, you have a 10-foot high chain link fence compound. Let's just say it's, 25 feet or 25 meters by 25 meters square. And it's got barbed wire on it. It's got concrete on the bottom, so you just can't crawl under it. It's got the gates locked. He goes, and got razor tape on the top. He goes, how would you get your platoon, all the members of your platoon from the formation area inside that chain link box? How do you get them over there? What would you do? And so, as a young 7-year-old kid, I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, we could try parachutes. No, that's not practical. We could try help. No, I don't know. Catapult. No. So, I'm going through all these, these options and nothing's working out. And I look at it probably dumbfounded. I go, I don't know. And my dad goes, it's simple. He goes, basically, you call your platoon to attention, right? And you tell your platoon to fall out and fall in on the other side of that chain link fence. And I go, that's genius. Because I said, you don't have to do anything. You leave it up to them, right? And so, and so that's actually a leadership trait, because you can't, in order to develop leaders, you've got to make leaders think, right? And solve problems. And so, and that's what he did. Basically, he said, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Meet me on the other side of the chain link fence when you get there, And so now the platoon, it's up to them to figure out how are they going to do it. And so that was my first leadership challenge, if you will. And it was from my father at a very young age. And I've never forgotten that. Here I am 52 years later. Okay. I still remember that conversation at the kitchen table. And I was really, wowed by that. I was like, that's freaking genius, Dad. It was like the simplest answer in the world, and so
it's so true though. That's so true.
Yeah. And my dad going on in life, right? So I learned a lot from my father, man. I love my father. He's gone. He's been gone now for 10 years, but he was my mentor. He was my leader. This guy was awesome, man. And he wasn't a big man. He was actually a very small man, but he had a big heart, and he had very strong, powerful leadership traits and qualities that made him a giant among men because of the way he thinks, He was the guy that, you've seen the videos, they throw the little Cocker Spaniel in there with Pride Alliance, and the little Cocker Spaniel was running the show, right? Because his intellect, his intelligence, and that's who my dad was, man. And so moving on later on in life, so that was the first lesson about leadership I learned, and that was from my father. The last lesson I learned about leadership was after my father died. It was the most important lesson I've ever learned in my life. Was from my father after he died. I learned this lesson. Okay. And here's the story. So, okay. So I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of a longer version of it. I think it's kind of important for context for everybody that's listening. So my dad called me. He was 71 years old. And I said, son, I got cancer, stomach cancer. Like, we were shocked, right? Nobody gets cancer in my family. But my dad had stomach cancer, very radical, very aggressive cancer. And so I was confident enough. I said, don't worry, Dad, you're not going to die. I'm going to help you survive this, right? And I really believe I could help him survive it with my background. So I remember, we had some long conversations. And finally, so when the diagnosis first happened, it was like in November. I believe it was March when he got the surgery after chemotherapy. They removed 2/3 of his stomach. He recovered from all of that within 3 weeks. 4 weeks, he was good as new. He was happy to be alive. And then all of a sudden, he came down to a really bad lung infection, which is within 24 hours resulted in a bad heart attack. And what I believe happened was the surgery, the stress, the chemotherapy compromised his immune system, left him exposed to a lung virus infection. And so he spent the next 4 months in ICU. And he was just falling apart. He was just going downhill. I mean, he had tubes running out of his entire body, IVs. He finally ended up getting a tracheotomy, they put a breathing tube into him. He had a mask on. He had catheters catheters that. It was bad, right? And and so the lung infection wasn't abating at all. So I remember for those 4 months, I never left my father's side. I lived in Florida, but I came to North Carolina. And I basically I spent every day, 24 hours a day with my father. I slept in the same room. They gave me a bed, and I just stayed there with my dad the entire time. Other than for an hour or two, I need to go, go shower, go get some more, groceries or whatever, regroup. But I never really left my dad alone. Usually, when I left, it was usually because my mom was there or somebody else was there. But I vowed that no matter what, my father would never be alone, nor would he ever die alone. That was going to make sure of that. And so this is the soldier in me, man, because, I've held men in my arms that have died in my arms. I was the last person to hold them, the last person, and all I could do is see them out with some comfort, and hope that, it eases the pain on the way out. And that's what I thought about my dad as well. It's like, he deserves that. And no way should anybody leave him alone. He needs us there to the final hours to encourage him to live, but also to comfort him, as well. So he finally passed away. And like I said, it was a long, miserable 4 months. He gave it the good fight, and so finally we had the memorial service at the church. Actually had the 21 gun salute, had the honor guard there because my father was a veteran. So they brought in the color guard in there, the honor guard, all that, I made sure my father got a formal military burial and everything that he deserved to go along with it. He's a Vietnam veteran, et cetera. And I remember the preacher asked me if I wanted to come to the front, and say a few words. And I just could not get out of that seat. I was so choked up. I was so heartbroken. This is my mentor, my leader was gone. As much as I wanted to go up there, I knew that I would just sit up there and just start bawling like a baby. And I just couldn't do it, right? And to this day, I still feel bad about that, but I know who I am. And as tough as some people think I am, there's a weak spot, and I am a sensitive guy when it comes to my family and people that are good people. I do have compassion. And that's why I think maybe it's because I do have compassion for good people and the innocent people that I'm such a ferocious fighter. I don't care about killing bad guys. I do it all day long with a smile on my face, And so when it was all over, the memorial service is over, everybody's kind of standing around, shaking hands, hugging and stuff. This woman walks up to my mother and I, and she introduces herself as a nurse. We don't know who she is. And she goes, "I'd like to have a word with you too, if it's okay." I'm like, "All right." So she takes us off to the side and she goes, "I know your father. I read in the newspaper he had passed away, and that's why I'm here today." He goes, "But more importantly, I came here for you because I wanted to share something with you that you probably are not aware of." And I'm like, "Oh shit. What did Dad do?" We had an affair, we were screwing around. What was going on?
Are you my sister now? Or
yeah, exactly. Like you're the other woman. I don't know. What's going to come out of her mouth? I'm like, "Oh my God, here we go." And she's like, "No." She goes, "I'm a nurse at a nursing home, and for the last several years, like 5, 6, 7 years now, she told us that my father would come by this nursing home every day." For about an hour and a half, he would bring flowers and candy and gifts for one old lady that had no family, nobody. She had nobody in her world. She lived in this nursing home all alone. And my dad would come there every day just to see her and give her gifts and sit down with her and just shoot the shit and just talk about whatever. Give her some company every day. He made her feel like, wow, there's someone out there that actually cares about me.
Cares.
And she was very old, and my dad and never told anybody. Nobody knew this was going on except for the nurse. She was the only one because she saw him coming in every day. And so nobody knew this was happening ever. And until the nurse told us. And I got to tell you, man, I was stunned. I thought that was the most awesome thing I've ever heard in my life. I was like, wow. This man, this is the most selfless act I can think of. This guy did something and never told anybody because he didn't want us to pat him on his back. He didn't want, our affirmations and all those things. He wanted to do this from his heart because that's what he wanted to do. And so that is leadership, man. That was the ultimate lesson from my dad. on leadership. And I got that lesson after he passed away. I've never forgotten that. And I keep every day thinking, how can I rise to that level? What can I do, to be on that level? And so for me, it's been very inspiring. And my dad to this day is still inspiring me. Why? He's my father. He's a leader. He mentored me. He raised me to be the guy I am. There's people out there that maybe think I'm a turd, especially on the left. I get beat up by the pacifists and the lefties all the time. And I really don't even care about them, right? They don't matter to me. They're not important, but they see me as something different. I got called out, a guy tried to call me a hitman and this, you're just a hitman and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, you know what? The guys I hit were all terrorists and they would have cut your damn head off. So, you can thank me and I'll take that. Yeah, I hit people. I hit them with lead gloves, man, and put them down all day long. But you're going to have that. And I don't care about them. What I want to do, I'm not going to try to convert anybody because most people are lost cause anyways. All I want to do is encourage, empower, and embolden like-minded people like me, like us, to be better, particularly young men and women, to be bigger, better, stronger, lead by example. This is what's going to save America. This is what's going to keep us alive, man, it's that same leadership mindset mentality that got us through the West, man. It got us through everything we went through, the pioneers and everything we are where we are today. It's that mindset. It wasn't liberalism and all this other passive bullshit that got us through the frontiers and the wars and everything that we've gone through to become America. It was leadership, and it was right. It was men. It was men that led the way. Okay, and so look, that's not discounting women because we have gender roles. We have roles. I know that hurts people. Oh my God, gender roles. That's so misogynist. Well, let's be real. I live in Asia. Okay, there are gender roles and it works here. Men are men, women are women. And we have different roles, but it works because we're a team. We work together for the common goal, the common good, our children, everything. And so there are roles. And we had roles. We've always had roles up to a point where now you have feminists trying to destroy that. We've gone from, you've got men taking, cutting their off and taking hormones and call themselves chicks and competing against legitimate women, or they can't even define women anymore.
What's really funny about that is what really cracks me up about that is that that's something where everybody's like we were really big pushing women and getting women and showing that they had they were of the same equal importance, which they are. I mean, obviously all of us came from a woman. I mean, I'm very thankful for my mother. I'm thankful for my wife and the mother of my children and all that kind of stuff, and that's great, right? I mean, but what's really cracks me up is now that men can be better women than women can now. That's what we're praising, is that kind of silly shit. I think it's really odd that we can, that people take our role as a man, right, and look at it as it's an affront to somebody else's role, and where instead we should be taking and really raising up the importance of mothers, right? And the important role of a woman in society and how much they contribute, and that how much it complements it in a good relationship between men. I mean, there's a need for, as much as I am, conservative, and as much as I am, all for the male and toxic male or whatever that they want to look at it, the provider and the defender, I because that's what I am, right? But at the same time, I know that there's another role that complements that it's the way our country was founded, is on checks and balances, right? But instead, we have taken and now we're glorifying the fringe. We're glorifying and raising to the greatest extent of what's so important, the 7% of our society. And not that I can't look at them and go, you don't belong. You do, but in 7%, right? I mean, you're not. Nowhere have we looked back throughout history of the world that was a leadership role. That was not what you see. If once that steps into the bounds of being a leadership role, that actually becomes the downfall of a society.
Yeah.
You know, when society's led by that example, you see the great things in history that rise up whenever it's, you know, when our roles are appropriate. You know, there's a design to everything. You can't sit back and look at it and not see throughout history that there's been a design with the way that everything's done. And when when it's, you know, according to the design, you know, things start to flourish. You know, things do and work well.
So let me give you another little story about leadership. So as I mentioned earlier, this is Bali. I'm in my office here in Bali. My wife and I started this company. Honestly, you know, and she'll admit it, I started the company because nobody knew anything about the business that we're in. But what I did is I took on the role as a leader. And the first thing I had to do, so let me explain what kind of company it is. First of all, it's a security company.
Yeah.
And we provide explosive detector dogs, narcotic detector dogs, patrol attack dogs for Marriott properties, for all the local hotels and venues in the Bali area. So we, you know, conceptually, I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. And so I realized I'm the only guy that knows how to do this. The only guy that knows how to train the dogs, everything, right? So the first step I had to take was, you're going to love this story because if you look to my rear here, you see that picture on the wall. That's my wife over there. Okay. And my wife has no problem with saying any of this. My wife is a village girl. She's got a 6th grade education at 6. Okay. That's as good as it gets. And when you start looking down on her, just remember this. My wife speaks 6 languages, to include Cantonese and Mandarin Chinese, Old Chinese, Bahasa, Sundanese, and English. All right, self-taught and very fluent at it. Okay, yeah. So this is a 6th grader with that capability. She grew up in the circumstances that didn't allow her to grow to be all she could be. She's a village girl. She ended up growing up in a village and ended up working as a maid to try to make ends meet for other. Worked for 13 years between Singapore, Taiwan, and Hong Kong as a maid. And so she and I have been together since in 2014, 2015. We've been married for several years now. And when we started this company 5 years ago, in fact, here in Bali, she had no idea how to turn on a computer because she never had a need to turn on a computer. She knew nothing about how the hell you turn the computer on. What is this thing, right? So now she runs a MacBook Pro, runs Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, everything. So I trained her that aspect of it. Then between the two of us, we're in a place right now where she literally runs the entire company. She does all the licensing. She does all the payroll. She does all the recruiting and hiring. She does everything to include training dogs for explosives, narcotics, attack work, training 65 men. 65 men, all right, to handle dogs. Okay, she is the boss. They call her Boss Canine. The police call her Boss Canine in this area, right? And she's very small. She's 90 pounds, 5 foot tall, and but she's the Cocker Spaniel I mentioned earlier in the den of lions, right? So here's a woman that literally runs everything, and I don't do anything really. Well, tomorrow I'm going to go teach some classes to some local security guards. And Friday I'm going to do handler training for security guards on the canines. But we run a pretty robust business. We got sidelined for COVID a little bit, but we're back into the running again. So I did a podcast I think a week or so ago, another one, and I was looking at some of the comments on the podcast and on YouTube, and somebody goes, why does Dale have a picture of himself in the background? See that one right there? And so, like implying that I'm some kind of, like I'm vain. And so, but what they didn't notice was why does Comstock have, pictures of this woman up here? Or, hey, how about that dog biting him in the arm? Okay. So the reason it's up there is because this office doesn't belong to just me. It belongs to my wife. And my wife, because she loves me so much, she puts pictures of me up, I put pictures of her up, and we put pictures of our machines up, our canines, right? And so it's because we love each other that we do that, okay? And guess what? She's still at home, like right now, she's at home taking care of the kids. She feeds me every day. She does everything every day as a woman, and she runs a business. And I do my part. I run the business. I actually run several businesses. But she understands. She doesn't let me clean. She doesn't let me wash dishes. She won't let me cook because that's in violation of her responsibility as she sees it. It's a cultural thing for her. I get it. Just like I don't want her little 5-foot body, 90 pounds to defend this 215-pound guy, right? It's like, right. I got my role, you got your role, okay? And so this is, again, now we're talking about leadership.
And the crazy part about it is it's not something that, when somebody takes pride in what they're doing and is honored for who they are, right? That, your wife isn't like belittled because she's doing that. It's actually the roles are done properly in a sense that, she's doing what she's good at and you're, you're doing, like, why not? I don't understand it.
She's very proud of it. She's so proud that she can take care of me. It's the most amazing thing ever. There's nothing she won't do for me. It's like at my bed, and I don't ask her to do anything. So the soldier in me, I'm the guy that wants to iron his own clothes, wash his own clothes, wash his own dishes, because that's what I've always been taught to. And it's been a hard transition for me to just, okay, you go ahead and do this if that's what you want. And now it's like that, right? And I do appreciate that because I do work very hard, but so does she. But we have dual responsibilities. But because of that, we're a team. We're an effective team. But we're still two individuals with two different gender roles, and we make it work. And it's not just me; it's really the culture, particularly the Asian culture here. It's like that. So we've strayed very far from that in America. Now
we really have.
Yeah, women think they're dudes. They think we're all equal. Look, here's another news flash: we are not all equal. I don't care how many times you say we're equal. We're not equal. I can go down the list why we're all different. You know what's even funnier? Is, everybody wants equality. We're all equal, but yet we want to call African Americans. Are they Americans or are they African Americans? And so what they're saying is, I want you to call me something different. So you want me to call you something different. So you want me to view you as something different. And then you're going to get mad because I might treat you as something different, right? And so they want it both ways. Okay, but I'm not just picking on African Americans, and so anybody thinks I'm a racist. No, my wife's a Muslim. She's Asian. My kids I got 3 black kids. I'm a black wife. Okay, I got a Hispanic wife or ex-Hispanic wife and daughter. I go on all day long. Okay, I'm the last guy that's racist. All I do is I call it out the way I see it. Okay, that's it. I'm not afraid of the bullshit political correctness. I call it the way I see it. But it is what it is. So if we're all going to be equal, let's just all call ourselves Americans. Okay, and let's stop adding the other adjective out in front of it. Let's just be all Americans. So let's stop trying to be different and then expect to be treated the same. But we're long beyond that. We're not going back. Okay, we've gone way too far down that road. There's no turnaround on it. So, like I said earlier, the best we can hope for is that we're not gonna change the minds of the opposition. They've already bought into the lie. I think I mentioned this to you before. It was Adolf Hitler, I believe, or Joseph Mengele, one of those two from the Nazis, that said if you repeat a lie enough times, usually within 90 days, people will believe it as the truth, in spite of the truth hitting them in the face, right? They'll come in. Here we are. We're living that lie, right? You and I are toxic white men. Okay, for everything we got, we didn't earn it. Okay, we took it from somebody else. That's, and it never ends. Even though, we can show we earned everything we got, we actually made the sacrifice, right? And it doesn't matter because it's really, I believe it's called mass hypnosis psychosis. It's a psyops term in the military, right? Basically, a way of indoctrinating people into a certain mindset through repetition. Okay, and by exposure, and over time, people will believe it because they won't use critical thinking skills. All right, use their own due diligence to analyze something for its veracity. Is it true or is it not true? They just go along with the figures of authority out there, which is your TV set and CNN. Right? Look, this is why the media really controls everybody because everybody's fixated on this little box in front of us, and whatever comes out of it most people will buy into it. Why? Because they figure the guy sitting on the other side of that screen, that journalist is a professional. His job is to do investigative work and accuracy, when in fact, they fail to understand that guy's a person who's also got, who's got opinions that are probably skewed one way or the other. And he's going to make sure that he peppers his opinion with his bullshit, with his propaganda that he wants you to buy into. Moreover, we look at the government as omniscient, all powerful. They know everything. They're powerful because it's the government. And so it's like Mark Twain said, most people, almost all people, will basically surrender their responsibility to figures of authority, to the government, to others, because most people are afraid of responsibility. They're afraid of thinking for themselves. They're afraid of doing their own critical thinking. They don't want that responsibility, because what if you arrive at the conclusion, go, shit, I was wrong. Now that means you got to fix your behavior. That means then what is your behavior? It's a lot of things, man. Your behavior is your personality, the things you do, the way you think. And people don't want to do that because they're in their comfort zone. So, I call it avoidance behavior. We avoid the truth. All right. We avoid the truth so we don't have to deal with it. And we can always go, look, it's the government that said this. We absolve our responsibility by going, it's the government said this. The news said this. I don't have to think about this. They're taking care of me. And that's the danger of this thing. And this is why what we've got to do is train people to think like leaders, not followers. That's what
you're exactly right.
Leaders, right?
Yep.
Because what they're doing is they're training followers. They're training followers is what they're doing. They're using propaganda to inculcate followers to follow along and basically, push the narrative when, there's a few leaders out there that will stand against it, but we're way outnumbered. We're way outnumbered.
I think that's where we have to look at leadership as probably one of the most important things. And in starting that leadership context of fathers, like I think that, bringing back the importance that, we've taken the power away from all this stuff, and we've given so much to the media. And the media, the thing is, the media can talk and give all kinds of propaganda, all they want to. All the bullshit that they're putting out, right? And it's not going to faze me. Like, you're not changing me, and you're not giving me a line of bullshit that I'm going to read into it. But my teenage boys, if I left them to that boob tube to let that talking head go and influence them with what reality is, or give them a view of the world that's different, then that's where I'm going to lose. Like, that's where we're going to lose. It's where we've lost it, right? Is we've turned our kids over to, watching the TV and listening to what, the propaganda is on TV, or looking at their phones and staring at their phones now. And that is where they're getting their information. That's where they're getting their truth from, instead of, where the man is, your father is out there. I mean, I can't tell you how important it was that my dad had me out there. And as much as I hated it at the time I was a lazy, skinny little shit too, right? And I was, more than willing to sit back and do something else besides go to work. And he'd drag me out there and have me working and doing stuff. And I'd complain, but I did it. And that gave me the work ethic that I have now. My boys, I go out and they're digging fence post holes and whatever else that I've got them out there doing. That is leadership. They hate it, right? I mean, I get it. They sit out there, and I know they get there's times when they, I tell them to do stuff, and they go in their bedroom and scream into their pillow going, I hate him. They can be mad or whatever. But you know what? That's what we did when we were boys. And that's what is you challenging authority. But you have to understand, even when you're challenging, there's prices to pay for that. But in the process of doing that, because I step into their lives and I spend time in there with them, it's the same thing as leadership, where you're not leading from back here going, you guys go do this and figure it out, but that you're stepping into leadership and you're spending time with your boys and with your kids, that, that's where they're going to learn, and they're going to get those values and the same kind of understanding of truth, because they've lived through truth. Well, so one of the things that I think is really kind of cool, looking through some of your stuff, is like that, I guess back in your 40s or so, you and your son did bodybuilding together. And that's the kind of stuff that, it was impactful, I'm sure, for you. But God, can you imagine how impactful for the young man growing up that, well, worse yet, that you beat him, but that you spent the time doing that together. I remember my dad, I remember kind of funny short story. My dad, I was in high school and I was really skinny and I really wanted to get, where I could bulk up. And my dad, I sat down with him. Me and my dad were really good friends. And he was actually my best man in my wedding. Right. And I come home and I told him, I said, I don't know, I need to get bigger. I'm just skinny and I'm having a hard time. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cycle of steroids. I want to do one cycle. I've been reading on it. It's not going to hurt. I'll do a certain deal and whatever else. And my dad, his activity at the time, right, he'd kind of slowed down and wasn't doing a whole lot. His biggest activity was they bowl. They bowl in old German 9-pin bowling alley, right? And he had enough of a belly he could set his beer on his little belly right there for a while. Well, he goes, whenever I said that, he, instead of saying, well, and talk to me about it, he says, well, I guess I got to help you out on that. And he went and he joined the gym with me and we started working out together. And by the end of the year, he was running 5Ks and I was lifting weights. And he was like, I'm going to show you. And he stuffed me with more bananas and peanut butter and shit, trying to get me to gain weight than a man in the moon, right? But he stepped into my life, right? He didn't just sit back and tell me how to do something. He stepped into it and he did it. And that had to have been a cool experience for you and your son.
Yeah. How old are your kids now, your boys now?
My youngest boy's 13. My oldest boy's 15. I got 11, 13, 14, and 15-year-old.
Yeah. Okay. So, as we know that I'm a performance coach, right? So I coach my demographics. I have three primary demographics: men between 45 and 59 come to me for coaching. Basically, I call them the old man clan. We try to recapture and recover their lives. The kid's gone to college, the wife won't talk to them. They look in the mirror, they're 9 months pregnant. They're like, please, Dale, help. I want to live like you, right? I'm 59 years old and I'm living the dream. And then I have another demographic of men between 33 and 37. These tend to be entrepreneurs. Some are veterans, some are not. They're more interested in learning my mindset about business development. And then the other group are young men from 19 to 26. And these guys have come to me that are in military or want to go into the military. They want to go to special operations, special forces, Rangers, those types of things. And they're looking at me to help them get there. So those are the three primary groups that I coach. Now, having said all that, so I coach people and all my coaching, and this is not a plug for my coaching business, but when I coach, all my coaching is based on science. The science supports my experience. My experience supports the science. Okay, I don't sit there and make stuff up and speculate. Well, what I tell you is based on science, real science research, right? And my experience supports it, right? And they go hand in hand. And so here's what I have learned. And the reason I asked you how old your sons were, because I know you probably had your boys out there, working in the fields a lot younger than that. But here's the thing, and here's the scary part. Okay, between the ages of 1 and 7, children are operating between 4 and 8 hertz. Okay, it's theta frequency. All right, at that frequency, at that mental mindset, if you will, it's the same frequency that people go into when they start meditating. All right, 4 to 8 hertz means we are at that range, at that frequency range, we are most susceptible to suggestions. Okay, that is why kids between 1 and 7 learn languages. They learn how to speak our language. They learn how to build computers and games and all this stuff. And you and I go, Jesus Christ, how did they do that? Because between those first 7 years are the most impressionable years of our little human lives. And guess what they're trying to do now on the left? They're trying to brainwash these kids into believing all this crap about, transgenderism and all this bullshit is okay. Because if you can inculcate that mindset in the 1 to 7 years old, they are going to carry that torch into adulthood. They are going to be the next, they're going to be the next guys that lead in this crap, right? So this is where it starts. Yeah. This is why we as men like you have to take a hold of our kids, all of them, boys and girls, and be there and mentor them. So expanding on that a little bit, my son, when he was old enough, when I mean old enough, when my kid was 4 years old, okay, he said, Dad, he was out in the front yard doing karate stuff like the Ninja Turtles. He loved the Ninja Turtles. We had a conversation. He was interested in karate. I said, all right, here's the deal. If you're gonna go to karate, here's my rule. Here's the rule. You got to get your black belt. You can't finish until you get a black belt. We agreed. Okay, Dad. 4 years old now. He was 4 years old. So I take him to school, and then he's enjoying it. And then the day came, like, I don't know where to go. Remember, we had a deal, right? We had a deal. Yep. It's not an option. You can't quit. You got to go finish. If you want to finish, get the black belt. So by the time he was 7, he got his first degree black belt. Okay. And guess what? When he enrolled at 4 years old, I'm like, well, damn, if my kid's going to do it and I got to bring him here today, I might as well go do it with him. So I jumped in there. Okay. So to this day, I have basically 2 6th-degree black belts and a 1st-degree black belt. Okay. And my kid's got his black belts. My daughter's got her brown belts. Okay. And so I got out there and did it with him. And so then when my kid was around 13, I started taking him to the gym with me. Now, he couldn't bench press his own body weight, and he couldn't, I'd run him into the mud, but within 6 months, here he's running circles around me. I was a good runner. And he's lifting his own weight and more. He's getting stronger and stronger and stronger. When he was 22, I saw a picture of him. I can't remember where, maybe on Facebook. And I didn't know it, but he had went into a bodybuilding competition and he looked pretty damn good. He was shredded and he was built. I mean, holy shit. And I called him up, goes, is that you? And he was embarrassed to tell me because, that was me, stand up there with a little skimpy, the little banana hammock, between my legs, and, that was kind of embarrassing for him. But I was like, whatever, man. I said, that's no big deal. And so I thought that was so cool. And at the time, my ex-wife and I were, we were bodybuilders, but we had been going to the gym a lot. We were getting more intrigued by this whole bodybuilding thing. And I made a decision one day. I go, why don't we all just do a bodybuilding competition together? And so we did. I started training in January. I was not a bodybuilder, not even close. And I started training in earnest. So did my son. So did my wife. We separately train now because I was in Afghanistan and Iraq most of the time. So while I was over there, if I was not shooting bad guys in the face and eating and sleeping, I was working out. And so within 7 months, all 3 of us went to our first bodybuilding show in Orlando. My son and I were both in the light heavyweight division. We got down to, I think we both got down to like 186, which is pretty good. We were at 3% body fat. Normally, I can get up to about 226. I know my kid can get at least 226 or more. But we both got down to 184, 186 at 3% body fat. And so we're standing side by side together on the stage, posing, doing our thing. Now, honestly, I didn't care about winning. I didn't care. All I cared about was that I could be there with my son on the stage, standing next to him, posing, right, and doing all this stuff. And of course, my wife was in her category. She did her thing. When it was all over, I took 5th place out of the group. My son took 6th. My wife took 6th. I'm the only guy that walked away with our trophy. And there's actually a funny story to go with that. So up to the last 30 days, we got on what we call a lean out diet. It's a very lean, regimented diet to lose all our weight and just get as lean as we can, right? And you have to have a lot of discipline. And there's small portions of meals throughout the day. There's no carbohydrates. Well, at least it wasn't for them. I didn't care about not winning so much. I just want to be good enough to go on stage. So they're over there. They're strictly on the diet. My wife's cooking everything every day and making all the food. And I'm over there slipping chocolate chip cookies in my mouth. I got caught. You're not taking this serious. You're not taking this serious. My wife got mad. I'm like, oh, no, And so I'm the guy that walks away with the trophy after eating all the cookies too, right? And so we're all walking out, and my wife ain't happy. My ex-wife ain't happy. She's pissed. She didn't do better. And I'm eating cookies. I'm the guy with the damn trophy. My son was a little embarrassed, but it wasn't because he wasn't working hard. It was he was actually one day away from being at where he needed to be, right? He wasn't quite dried out yet. He still carried a little water. If we had gone one more day, he probably would have beat me, but he didn't, right? So it was timing thing for him. He was off. And so we're walking. I'm walking behind my wife with my son. And I look at him and go, hey, dude, I said, I can't take this trophy home. You know that because I'll be sleeping on the couch or in the doghouse or in the garage. but I ain't gonna be sleeping with my wife, and I ain't gonna be getting no nookie for a long time. I said, so there's no way this is going home with me. I said, I'm gonna give this to you. Consider the trophy a shame because I beat you, right? And I'm 47 at the time, 48, he's 22, right? I go, so you let this old man kick your ass out there. I said, so what I want you to do is keep this trophy, and we're gonna do another show together. And when that day comes around, I said, I want you to beat me. I want to beat me fair and square and give me my damn trophy back. I want my trophy back, but I'm not taking it like this, right? And so that's the deal we had, right? So I'll be 60 next year. I don't know when he and I will do another show together, if we ever do another show together. But I plan on doing another show next year when I'm 60. I plan on going back out there and competing again. So, that was a great experience because, we all got involved in this thing. I was involved with my son. So I remember starting in martial arts, then the running, then the weightlifting. Here we are bodybuilding together. He's 22 years old. I'm 47, and I get to win too, right? And that's what's really cool. And it's not because I want to beat my son, but what I want to do is mentor him, go, damn, that old man is badass. I want to be like him when I'm 47. My last bodybuilding show was 50. I took second place in the heavyweight division. Okay. And the only reason I stopped competing is because I had other things I wanted to do. And, I went through some transitions, but I'm not over with it yet. I'm going to get back into it next year. So to your point, too many guys out there, too many men out there, they cheat themselves all their lives, right? Because what they do is it's a noble thing to take care of your family. It's a noble thing to work. But it's not the right thing to do to neglect yourself. Okay. Because, all right, I've got friends right now that have died, fathers that have died because they neglected themselves, working and not taking care of themselves. Right. So my question to them, if I could ask them, is like, how did that help your family? How did you help your family? Because you're dead now. Right. Sure. So now you've left them out there struggling. And so, you have to take care of yourself too. At the same time, you can't be neglectful of, your own stuff. I think one of the things that's such an eye opener for that, like one of the biggest experiences about, weightlifting or learning a different language or, whatever it is that you're doing, particularly like the physical stuff, because the physical stuff, is such it kind of speaks to men mostly, right? I mean, it's something that we're kind of innately made and designed to do, is to work hard and be physical about that stuff. And it's so true in all of creation that nothing is gained without struggle. Like you don't learn anything without the struggle. You don't build muscle without tearing it down. You don't build a fence without sweat. You don't, nothing comes without the struggle. We learn everything that we learn is through adversity. Everything that we learn is through adversity. And a work ethic, majority of all men, work ethic is something that is taught and learned. We have desire to sit on your ass and not do anything. But whenever you are forced to, and you took your son and you go, okay, you can do that. We can do Taekwondo, but when you're doing that, you're going to do it until you get a black belt. And if that wasn't the deal, when it got hard, you had a way out. And when you allow that way out, you teach a habit. You teach a habit to quit before the end is. And if you don't go through that, if you don't have a father that pushes you through it and goes like, no, sorry, you got to show up. You got to show up and you got to get, it's all you got to do is keep showing up. You keep showing up, you're going to end up being there. But by the time you get there, if you don't feel that reward, if you don't feel that, that's such an emotional thing to get a black belt. I mean, when you get a black belt, it is like, I see so many guys that have busted their, in jujitsu. I see so many guys that have, when you see them getting their black belt, how emotional are these big guys that have been like rolling for 10 years and going at it to get their black belt. And when they get their black belt, it's an elated feeling. It's the same feeling that you got when, you got your wings or you got your parachute emblem or whatever it was, that your SF stuff or any of that stuff. It was just, that is of such great value, not because the little, emblem is of great value, but the struggle that you went through in order to earn that. And not many men
are going to go through that struggle and have experienced that elated feeling because they weren't taught that work ethic. They weren't taught that. And it's so provable in everything that we do that you're not going to get there without the hard work, right? There's got to be struggle. And if you don't, you're not going to learn. You're not going to grow.
It's funny you said that, because in my coaching, I always tell people that anything you do in life that you want to be successful with always starts with a struggle. If it didn't, if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it. In fact, only 1% of the population, only 1%, self-actualize. In other words, they live the dream. They reach the pinnacle, the mountaintop of success where they would love to have been. They reach it. Only 1%. 99% of people, when things get hard, they give up. Or they they deviate from the path. And before you know it, they may make it up the mountain a little bit, maybe a little higher than others. Some of them never get out of the valley. But everybody eventually dies somewhere along a ridgeline or in the valley of bones with all the other losers. Okay, because they quit. They always quit. Why? Because they was taught to quit, or they were never taught to win. And so this is the problem with society. Everybody gets a trophy. So we're not teaching anybody to win. We're teaching everybody, you just have to show up and you get some free stuff, right? And this is what happened. This is one of the reasons that, look, what I call the downfall of the U.S. military, it started a long time ago. It started when I was in. In fact, I would argue it started around the year 2000 is when I saw it starting to collapse, which is what prompted me to retire. And I'll give you a clear example of that. So on Fort Bragg, I remember USASOC, United States Army Special Operations Command, they had a ceremony. All the Green Berets were there because USASOC is, the headquarters for Green Berets. But so General Shinseki, who was Secretary of Defense, came down. Now, he was not a Green Beret. He was just a regular, actually a tanker, armored, vehicle guy. He shows up with all these Green Berets. He's looking around. He's just in awe at all the berets. Oh, my God, they're so beautiful. And right there on the spot, he goes, I want everybody in the Army to have a beret. In fact, make it a black beret. And the reason he said the reason he said black beret, because traditionally, tankers would wear black berets, right? And so it's like everybody gets a black beret, everybody feels good about themselves. And they're like, sir, the Rangers already have the black beret. Well, they get another one. So the Rangers ended up going to the brown beret, which was a kick in the balls, and then put the black beret in everybody. Now, here's the thing. So what he wanted to do, which is totally wrong, he wanted everybody to feel good about themselves. You get to wear a beret, you get to feel special, but they didn't get to earn it. That's the point. They didn't get to earn that beret. They all look like shitbirds. They look like pizza hats on their head. They have no pride. It's just a piece of headgear. And then the guys that actually earned it, the Rangers, were like, they were stripped of that honor of having earned that black beret, and they were given a brown beret, basically downgraded from black to brown. We're going to give you a shit-looking beret, literally. So this is when things started to implode, I thought, in the military. And there's a few other things that happened within less than 2 years while I was there that made me decide it's time to get out of here. I don't want no more part of this. And it hasn't gotten much better. All we got to do now is look at the leadership all the way at the SecDef level and analyze what happened, for example, last year in Kabul. And this is just insane where we are in the military. But the point I'm trying to really make is, about, what you mentioned a minute ago about, feeling good about yourself and earning something. There's a purpose for that, right? When you earn something, you value it. And not only that, you put your best effort forward to get that, because if you think something's prestigious, like winning the Green Beret, and wearing that Special Forces tab, wearing that Master Blaster jump wings, all those things that go with that, it makes you strive to be the best you can be, because it's attainable, but it's difficult and it's reserved for the best. And any man that's got any testosterone, any pride, is going to want to be the best he can be. And so here's a goal for him. Here's an incentive. Here's the prize for him. we have gotten into a society where everybody gets a prize. You don't have to work hard. You can feel good about yourself, even though it's a false pride. It's a false sense of success and accomplishment. And that is why we have such a mediocre society now at best.
Exactly.
And so, again, it goes back to one thing. It's got to go back to, I can't let the leadership in the military, the government, lead my son or daughters for that matter. And by the way, we mentioned sons a lot, but my oldest child is my daughter, close to, she's 37 now. But anyway, she's actually my business partner. So it's not like I have forsaken her. In fact, and I think, she has said it more than once publicly that, she respects what I taught her. And in a lot of ways, I think she's thankful for the way I taught her to be the person that she is today and the success she had. In a lot of ways, we're very alike. And so it only makes sense that we work together on business. So at the end of the day, it comes back to the parents, it comes back to the fathers, even the mothers to lead and mentor their children. Remember, you are a leader. You might be a family, but somebody's got to lead in that family. And leadership requires setting the example, doing the right thing when nobody's looking, doing the right thing no matter what, always doing the right thing, setting moral and ethical standards for the rest of your family to follow. That's how they learn. We've lost all that. That's why we've got all these hooligans in society and all this crap going on, because at least half the society is just, they don't have that. They don't have that regimentation. They don't have that, lead by example mindset. They don't have that parenting. They don't have, and again, not trying to give kudos to the politicians, but the politicians know how to manipulate the mind. They know how to manipulate the dumb masses. They understand the human condition better than anybody. They know if you say the same thing over and over, eventually people will believe it. And if you fuck up and you say the wrong thing today, nobody will remember tomorrow. They don't care, right? I'm watching this closer and closer and closer, and I'm realizing that there's so much truth to that, because I look at, these people that are supposed to be stellar examples of leadership. And by the way, no politician's a leader, period, with some exceptions. Okay, there's some exceptions, and they tend to be veterans. They're actually leaders. But on the civilian side of the house, show me one leader. Biden's no leader. He's not a leader. What makes him a leader? Nothing about him is a leader. At best, he's the executive manager. At best, right? That's it. But leadership is different, and it's sorely lacking, and it's not where it needs to be to mentor young people. We have examples of, and I don't know, I'll put it out there. For example, what's her bucket? Pocahontas. I keep calling her Pocahontas, but what's her name? The senator. Trump kept calling Pocahontas. Anyways, she's a white woman, pretended to be an Indian, right?
No.
And she went to college on minority scholarships, all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
And she benefited from all this stuff. And it turns out she's got no Indian blood in her. It's all bullshit. Then you've got the other guy, all the names elude me right now. He's a Vietnam veteran. He's on. Then we got called the bald-faced lie. He was never in Vietnam. It was all a lie. He's been telling the same lie all year, and he keeps getting reelected. You got Swalwell from California. This asshole, bedding down a Chinese freaking intel agent. And I'm sure he's giving all kinds of freaking juicy secrets, and this guy's still operating. And so, intel in that realm is good for about 24 hours, and everybody just forgets about it. It's just totally forgotten. Yeah. And so it's because people don't care, because politicians are smart enough to know people will not pay attention. In fact, going back to the Romans, right? With the Senate say, give them bread and circus, they'll never pay attention to what we're doing up here. And sure enough, they thought, bread, circus, gladiator fights, everybody was happy campers. Yeah, had no idea they're getting screwed over by the government until the Roman Empire fell. And that's exactly where we're at today. We are in the final throes of America. It's about dead and gone. We're right there on the cusp. We have maybe, one, maybe two chances. One chance is this fall, the conservatives win the Senate and the House, or at least the Senate. And two, we win back the presidency, in 2024. We can only hope for that, because otherwise this whole country will be fundamentally different. And they have done that by manipulating our children in grade school for the last 30 years. That's a fact. Because of what I said earlier, remember, age 1 to 7, you're most impressionable. If you can pollute those little brains, those little fertile minds with your bullshit, you're going to raise bullshit. That's what they've done. And they've done a pretty good job at it. And it's not a mystery. Look, the Russians have said that. What's his bucket? One of the Russian politicians. I mean, this is not something that I'm making up. This has been on the books for a very long time. I'll share another story with you, man. People think that this is all bullshit. All right. Who do you think owns Hollywood? Who do you think owns most of the production companies out there? Who do you think? You think it's a bunch of old white men, right, with money? No. I'll tell you who it is. It might be white men, all right, but they ain't from America. They're the Russians and they're the Chinese. They own everything. They bought everything we got. They own shit. They own all our food. They own all our shit in America. People don't realize that.
I've seen that. I've seen that. Like all the different hands that they've got into our industries, all the different industries, they're controlling the majority of it. It's crazy.
But think about this: if you can control television, movies, the media, which is what they're doing. TikTok. Who owns TikTok? Chinese. All right. So they own a lot of production companies, movie production companies. So they have a say in what gets produced, what goes into a movie, what doesn't go into a movie. I know this on a first-hand basis, on a professional basis. It's not me reading an article in a newspaper and some guy making this shit up. I've got a deeper knowledge on this stuff than most will ever know. Okay, and I won't go into it.
Well, and really, you've got a much more of a broad worldly view of what the rest of the world is looking like. I mean, I think that's like the same thing of most of people nowadays thinking that I remember a couple of years back they were all worried about what the rest of the world thought about us and thought about what the rest of the world looks at you is like you're a bunch of bumbling idiots. Is what they look at the United States as right now.
They're laughing at us. Here in Indonesia, they're laughing at Joe Biden. What? The Australians are making, every day the Australians, their news, media is making fun of our president. The whole world thinks this guy's a bumbling idiot, right? And they're scratching their head and go, how do Americans, how do they vote? How do they create this shit? How do they allow this? Unfortunately, sometimes being a moral, honorable, good human being as conservatives. We're going to be the quiet, respectful type, the silent majority. We're going to play by the rules. We'll go to the voting poll. All that bit us in the ass. All right. We have lost our ass because we shut our mouths. We thought we were playing by some rules. There are no rules. We just thought there were rules, and we thought we'd play by them. Be the nice guy, silent majority. We go vote. There's a system, and that's how we do this. And the system beat us. They beat the system on the other side, and they turned the system against us. So we have screwed ourselves by being Mr. Nice Guy. And the adage, the nice guy always wins fast, but wins last. That's true. And we have come in last again because we're too damn. We have to go back to what made America great was in the early days, in the West. It was the rugged, robust, hardcore men of the time, take no shit, take no prisoners kind of guys that built America and built America to what was one of the greatest militaries in World War II, World War I. Throughout history, we're so great. The strongest country in the world because of these types of men. And then suddenly there was a paradigm shift, and we've turned into a bunch of freaking whiny babies. We're losing wars. We're losing our ass, and it's not because of soldiers necessarily. It's because of politicians. And the politicians,
the leadership.
They've been to the whims of the voters. Am I going to get voted in again if I don't acquiesce to? Whoever's putting their money and they're bending to the whims of whoever's putting the money in their pocket is what's really the shitty part about it. Absolutely, man. Yeah.
You've been listening to the Go Time Podcast with Todd Martin. If you'd like to know more about the Go Time Podcast, Todd Martin, or Todd Martin Performance Courses, you can visit us at toddmartin.net, N-E-T. We're going to be putting up some merchandise on there too for the podcast. And also, please, if you get the time and you like it, share with a friend. Give us a like and a review. I guess all that stuff kind of really helps and helps us get it out there to more people to be able to enjoy the podcast. So until next time, go time.